guys, welcome back to Digital Artcast. Another awesome episode hitting you in the ears as soon as we've been able to get back in the swing of things. We've got another awesome artist lined up in the wings, waiting. And it's someone that I've tried to get on for a while now, but just again, conflicting schedules, and he's been really busy with his awesome new game, including other artworks. So if I get this right, it's Nik Hagialas. Hey Nick, what's happening?
Hey Gordon, what's up?
Hey dude, hey. Yeah, so you and I have known each other, I think going on about 2 years now, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
And this is I suppose a different take on most episodes I've done, because we have actually worked together. I have done some stuff for you for your game way back on Mask of Semblance. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, it's been a kind of in the works. I want to try and also get an episode, I think, at one point with you and Armin, who's also your co-founder of the company and kind of partner in crime.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Then I thought we'll focus just now on the art side initially, because apart from making games and doing concepts for your own game, you have worked as a concept artist for multiple other companies and worked on projects throughout the games industry. So I think we've kind of talked at length at it, but then people don't really know you or your work. What is your kind of current position, or outside the mask, what is your kind of day-to-day job?
Oh, so just like my general position. Well, it's kind of funny because I'd say before I started working on this game, I was more of a concept artist / illustrator, but now I kind of tell people I'm more of a game developer. I feel like I'm in the engine so much as well as doing art that I see myself as more of like a game developer than just strictly an artist.
I mean, that's funny though, because like I have actually spoke to a couple of guys I know who are games artists, and they actually call themselves game developers because they see art as an integral process of the development cycle. So to say you're a games artist is also accurate, but then you could say you are a game developer because you are part of the development process, even if it is pre-development, like if you're at the start. Because even I know people who I'd say, I'll work in the movie industry, and they do art for, films, but they still consider themselves part of that whole overall process. So I think that you could definitely use the word game developer. I think that covers a broad spec. But but more specifically, you are a 2D artist that works within concept. So in illustration. Going back, I know I'm because we've had these conversations, so a lot of this is secondhand information for me. But for the guys out there, you went to school for this, didn't you? You went to university, college for art.
Yeah, I went to Penn State University here in Pennsylvania in the United States, and I actually got a BFA in art. My focus was new media, which is what they were kind of calling like the digital art portion. So I did learn, Photoshop, Illustrator, as well as had the sort of traditional like oil painting, figure drawing kind of stuff. But what was cool about that program was I also got to dive into a little bit of programming. I learned sound design, I learned motion graphics. So even though it wasn't strictly like an art school, it was more of a liberal arts school. I got a very well-rounded education, which I think kind of helped me for future projects down the line.
Yeah, because I think with even like game development, when you get into concept art, knowing further parts or other pieces of the pipeline will definitely dramatically improve your chances of fitting into a studio, especially like between even 2D and 3D. That's a good thing to know.
For sure. Yeah, I did do a little bit of 3D in college as well. It was one of those situations though where I think my professor was learning the program alongside us. So I don't know if I got the best 3D education, but I did teach myself a lot. And I think a lot of what I do, I kind of learned from YouTube tutorials and just practicing.
I mean, that's probably going back a while now, thinking or casting your mind back to your student days, but because you're in Philadelphia, right? So, like, what did you do? You feel back then there was much of an art community for games development art, or do you think that you've had more resonance online and speaking to people on forums, or?
So when I was doing more concept art illustration, I was a little bit more closed off. I would attend this one convention called IlluxCon every year, which I believe now is in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I got to meet a lot of artists, and some of them ended up being local artists. I actually took a course in Philadelphia. It was like an illustration course. And one of my teachers, Matthew Stewart, was actually a Magic the Gathering artist, and he
Oh,
was
wow.
local. And there's actually some other local Magic the Gathering artists nearby as well. So
Mm.
I kind of started to find out that there was in our community here, but it wasn't
Right.
until I really started diving into game design and attending the Philadelphia IGDA, like International Game Developer Association meetings, that I realized there was a lot of interested, people interested in the game development industry here in Philly.
Yeah. I mean, because I found that really interesting. I was watching a Blender Guru video the other day,
Mhm.
and I found out that he was checking out like some of the best cities to work within CG or just games industry, and I never knew that within ArtStation you can actually search artists via the city they live in.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that either.
yeah, there's an advanced search feature where you can actually search people. Like if you just put in Philadelphia, you could actually it would list every single artist on ArtStation that lives in Philadelphia. Um, so yeah, that might be a thing to look into maybe
Yeah,
further
right.
down the line. Like that'd be cool. Like,
Yeah.
because I looked the other day and I was like, oh, holy shit, there's so many people in Scotland I never knew that were on ArtStation, and I've managed to reach out to a couple of them, and yeah, I thought, oh, that would be quite handy. So yeah, if you're looking to source people for your project, then ArtStation can filter by city, so
Oh,
it's
cool.
it's definitely handy. Fun fact as well, totally random, but we went to see Shazam the other night, and I never
Yeah.
knew it took place in Philadelphia.
Oh, I didn't know that either. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, yeah, like I had no idea that Shazam's hometown was Philadelphia. So like I was watching it, and all the signs were coming up and stuff, and
Yeah,
like Penn State and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, oh, holy shit, this is set in Philly. Like
that's
so,
awesome.
there you go. Weird sidetrack for you, but yeah, if you ever go see Shazam, you could probably look out and see if you recognize any of the buildings.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know where in Philadelphia it would take place, but yeah. So yeah, yeah. So you got your BFA. You were attending different classes. You were meeting this community.
Mhm.
So where did you take your first step into the industry? What was your? I'd say the first time you probably got paid to do some art. Was that something freelance, or did you walk straight into like a studio doing work for people, or?
So I've actually never had an official like in-house studio job. I've
Right.
worked freelance since I graduated in 2013, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean, going back, I was doing, I kind of want to call it like professional work, even though I wasn't getting paid when I was working in college. That was my first like real experience because I was working on a startup game. It was going to be an MMO, like surprise, surprise, that fell through. But I was working with a team and I had an art director, and it was actually my art director, Jonathan Duncan, that suggested I go to this AluxCon convention.
Right.
So
Yeah.
once I went to that, that's when I started meeting more professional artists, and it kind of really like kicked me in the butt in terms of getting my art to the level it needed to be, because
Yeah.
these artists were super critical of what I needed to do to get there, and I really took that to heart, and worked really hard and came back every year again and again to show them my work, and it was improving until it got to the point where I don't know if this was probably my first big like paid work, but I started getting contracted to doing fantasy flight cards for the Game of Thrones and the Lord of the Rings trading card games. Um, and that was all because of attending that convention and progressing in my skill level. Um, Besides that, I had other friends from school that had graduated before me, and they were going off to like California to make indie films and stuff like that. So they were contracting me to do stuff like storyboards, and illustrations for their movies.
Right.
I had done a couple book covers. Yeah, but early on in my career, I was kind of just looking wherever I could to just get experience and do some freelance stuff.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, because you're relatively young in the industry. Because I mean, although it always seems weird to me because I've met you in person, you're
mhm.
like 5 years younger than me, something like that. You're 28, right?
Yeah,
27, 20.
28.
Yeah. So I mean, like the guys I know who are now, I would say in the um I wouldn't say the peak of your career because I don't think that ever really exists. But like the part of the career where they're comfortable, they're getting a lot of work, they've got a name behind them.
Sure.
They guys are my age, but then they've spent like you have just now years grinding and doing other projects. So but then even like I say, for the what's the word I'm looking for, the youth of your career, you still have done a lot because you've worked on multiple projects, you've done multiple things, you've got into Fantasy Flight. For a lot of people, that's a big thing as well, because Fantasy Flight obviously are a big company, they cover big IPs, and then of course now you're building your own video game, which is like, I think something that people always talk about as artists. Like, I really want to do that. I mean, I want to do that one day.
Sure.
I mean, me and Ahmed Ahmed talked about, doing my own version of Zelda, but you've done it. I mean, you've got, a working prototype of a video game that is now graced the floor of PAX East 2 years in a row now, because you were there last year. You've just came back from it recently in Boston. So yeah, you've done a lot for the small time you've been outside of school, which is
I
great
know, man.
because
If I showed you my my CV or my resume, it like looks absolutely insane. But it's one of those things where it's like I've worked. It's a trade off, because at the end of the day, I'm kind of like working for myself, and I always have been. So
yeah,
obviously, my schedule is really flexible. I can kind of take on whatever projects I want, but there is always that fear of like, oh man, well, what if somebody doesn't want to work with me, or like, what if I have a dry spell? And that's kind of
yeah,
always how it happens as a freelance artist. There's just these like periods of the year where you just get slammed with work, and then you just have nothing. So you really have to be smart about, marketing yourself, understanding how to like work with the kind of finances you're getting as a freelance artist. Um, but yeah, you obviously, if you're working in a studio, it's like a more stable, like 9 to 5, 10 to 6 sort of job. So you don't get all of that variety, but it
yeah,
does, working in a studio does, I would say, make you very good at the thing that you're trying to do, like very
yeah,
quickly, because you're constantly having to practice the same thing over and over every
yeah,
single day. Whereas
yeah,
like I had taken on jobs, like I've been doing some advertisements for one of my previous clients, and he actually is the marketing coordinator for a pool cleaning robot company. So occasionally he'll have me do some like advertisements, like actually like clip together images with like text on backgrounds. Like there's no painting involved. So
wow.
that's like the kind of random stuff you'll do as a freelance artist, as long as you keep your doors open, kind of thing.
Yeah, but then
Um,
of course, like most people I know who have done that for years, there will
mm,
come a point where you will get big enough that you can probably just pick and choose your clients, and you'll probably pick obviously things that will interest you more, like bigger projects or bigger, um, for a game or a movie or whatever. But
sure.
yeah, like it's not a forever kind of thing. Like you, but then you've been very vocal on. I mean, before I even kind of met you, I'm sure I met you or met you. I saw you through YouTube videos, because you were kind of pumping them out quite rapidly about
Yeah.
like techniques to do and like plein air painting and stuff like that. So was that something else you wanted to pursue as well on YouTube? Was that just a side hobby or?
Yeah, it was one of those things that was obviously before I was working on Mask of Semblance, and
Mhm.
it was I was at that point in my career where you were kind of talking about like I could be a little bit more picky with my clients, because I had like three pretty steady freelance jobs. I was
Mhm.
also getting contacted by just like random people to do random stuff. So I was kind of like, okay, what can I do to further myself as an artist beyond doing client work? And I was like, okay, I can kind of give back through this YouTube channel, as well as promote my personal brand. And I think, having a personal brand and a brand identity I think as any artist, even if you're working in a studio, is a good thing, because at the end of the day, it puts a face behind the art, as
Mhm.
well as, showcases the art.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was working with my buddy, and we started this Art Bros channel, and it all came about because my previous art director that I had mentioned before, Jonathan,
Yeah.
he said one day, he's like, "Oh man, Nick, you're such an art bro." And I thought that was hilarious, because I don't know, I'm the kind of guy, like, I like to go to the gym, I like sports, and you know,
Yeah.
I'm sure other artists do those things too, but
Yeah.
I have a little bit of that broiness in me, I guess.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
also into like all the nerdy fantasy stuff. So
Yeah.
that name stuck, and we kind of just rolled with it. I mean, it's so broy that the bros has a Z at the end of it. So
Yeah, I can specifically remember a Snapchat from
yeah,
your lovely wife to be when you guys were at, I don't
yeah,
know what it was, but it was some dance festival in Philly where you guys were like in the shorts with the shades with the drink in hand.
yeah,
I believe actually the specific thing I sent back was fucking millennials.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds
So
about
yeah,
right.
but that's fine. Like, I mean, the amount of guys I have met in this industry who have, which I think is actually quite healthy, to have an interest outside of your art, which is
Yeah.
especially if you have that, I wouldn't say jock mentality, but the mentality of going out and getting fit and going to the gym, I think is almost essential when you work in the industry, because I mean I've struggled with it, because I mean I switched careers, and I continued to, because okay, so when I was an engineer, my
Yeah.
job was outside lifting heavy things and putting the heavy things down somewhere else.
Sure.
Then my activities to chill from that was playing video games, which
Mhm.
is something that involves sitting on your arse doing nothing.
Yeah.
So then when I switched, and then my career became sitting on your ass, and then my hobbies were also sitting on my ass,
Sure.
that obviously just spiraled and made the weight gain super rapid. So I think with their career, the exercise is always mandated, because there's so much of our career which is sitting at a desk staring at a screen for like 8 hours a day. I take it you feel like that's something for you, especially. You need to obviously practice daily. Do you try and make sure that exercise is part of your routine, not just because you like it, but you feel like it also balances your art side of life?
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, I even know when I don't go to the gym frequently enough, I don't sleep very well. I'll just be
Oh
like
yeah,
awake all night, and I get into this like really bad routine. And I don't know. It just kind of helps me stretch out, obviously, because especially sitting all day, like I will notice my posture start to change as well. Like I already have really bad posture,
oh you
so
get
when
that
I'm
total
not
hunch, yeah,
yeah, when I'm not lifting as well, it's just I get neck pains and stuff like that. So I don't know. I feel better, and it kind of raises my like endorphins. So
yeah,
it makes me more excited to sit down and work after
yeah.
I've lifted, because I'm already in that kind of like up sort of mood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Um,
used to do a thing at college that my lecturers used to actually slate me for, but I think I've met everybody artist I've met does the same thing, where if you're painting something and you want to zoom in, rather than press the key to zoom, you'll push your head closer to the screen,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
almost to the point you're hunched over the desk looking at
Yeah.
something. I'm like, oh god,
Oh, I
every
definitely
time.
do
Oh
that.
my god, it's such a horrible habit. When like my lecturer was like, "See if you just hold this control button and press this one, the image comes to you." I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I know," but I'm just, because you're only doing it for like 2 seconds. You're just like, "Oh, just lean over and look." And
yeah.
oh man, but yeah, that's the kind of habits that you get into, where you start to notice like your back arches a bit more, or like your
Mhm.
posture's falling, and I think it's a widespread thing I've seen in this industry, that people definitely try to like hike or lift or travel and do things that are outside things, right, as opposed to the
Sure.
inside. Because also just like daylight, like if you're sitting inside with, because you'll close the blinds or the shades because your monitor's getting glare, so
Yeah, yeah.
you're even depriving yourself of daylight. So it's got to be something that is in constant check, I think, with artists. Even Armin now, you'll probably notice that it'll be the same with him, because he's coding all day, so which involves the same discipline, which is sitting at a desk staring at a screen. So um,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
and then
sure.
and do you feel like do you think it's something that we definitely should be talking more about in the industry? Have you seen it with more students that like maybe do all nighters or spend time just behind the computer like for 3-4 days on the trot? Or
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, the other thing too, I think that happens is when you're sitting so long and you don't take breaks, you become less productive. Like you'll start painting over the same line over and over and over. And it's
yeah,
kind of good to get up and be active, like, get up, walk around a little bit or stretch. Like I'm even at fault for not stretching enough. Like my hips get really tight because I
yeah,
sit really weird while I paint.
yeah,
So just stuff like that. And I think just kind of taking those mental breaks is good for, motivation and getting back into the work.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
and yeah, to answer your question, I mean, people have even asked me to do videos on like a stretching routine or something like that. And I just have not gotten around to it, unfortunately, but I would
You've
love.
actually probably just struck gold there, Nick. I bet there is an absolute market for an artist to start a channel where not only it's art tutorials, but he also incorporates like working out stuff as well, like maybe
Sure.
exercises or stretches specifically tailored to artists who sit in specific positions,
Yeah.
and then even like testing out different chairs. And I know there was one chair, I can never remember the name for it, but I think it's like $1,000, and it's got like
Mm.
this replica spine up the back of it that's supposed to emulate your
Oh,
spine. So when you
interesting.
sit in it, it like almost cradles you, so you're not um what's the word? It's the kind of lower back
You're like
support.
Yeah, lumbar support.
Lumbar, that's it. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the lumbar support stuff's all built in it. So yeah, like I think because I remember somebody saying like $1,000 for a chair, that must be a total waste of money. And I'm like, if your career is sitting at a desk, that
Yeah,
is an investment. You know, it's like buying a good graphics card. It's it's something that is going to improve your career, not hinder it. So
for sure.
um, yeah. So I mean, with the regards to you've had so many freelance opportunities, and then you've had studio stuff, on and off.
Mhm.
What was the? I think I already know the answer to this. I kind of already do. But
Sure.
where did the idea from Mask come from? Because for what I understand, it was because unfortunately, like you said, some of the projects you had worked on, and I think it's very common, had never seen the light of day. So
Yeah.
was it that need to get something out that you'd worked on?
Yeah, when I was talking about that time period where I had the three steady jobs, I was working on a comic book, a card game, and a video game all at the same
Right.
time, and
Okay.
those projects all fell through within like 3 months of each other. And I was kind of just like, man, what do I do with myself? And I still had some savings, so I was like, all right, this is the time for me to get into my like really creative and out of the box kind of mode. And I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to code. Like I've always wanted to make games, so I kind of figured I can use my art and learn how to code and start prototyping something. I think I still had some small freelance stuff coming in the meantime. But yeah, it was a good opportunity to just start. And I think I had just read the book The Alchemist by Pablo Coelho, and I
Okay.
really liked that whole theme and the whole world he had built, and even down to the fact that like I believe the character was referred to as the boy the entire time, and that's so far how we've been referring to our character in Mask of Semblance. Um, but I liked the simplistic way he wrote, but
Mhm.
he still told an extremely meaningful story, and that's what I've always wanted to do with my work. Like, have it be very accessible to a wide audience, but tell a very deep and powerful story, an impactful story. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure like everybody else that's in this industry, like I grew up playing video games and stuff, and I was always drawn more towards like RPGs and action games and story based games, and I kind of just wanted to do that myself. So when I started working, I prototyped a very early concept of Mask of Semblance, and I obviously ended up getting stuck because I didn't go to school for programming or anything. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
when I hit up Armand, and I had known Armand since like freshman year of high school, so like I don't know, 13, 14 years, something like that.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
like, hey man, like I know you went to school for programming. Do you want to work on this video game with me? And he also had just lost his job, his like full time like adult freaking job. So he was like, yeah, might as well. So it was like really weird timing for both of us, but we were kind of just like, I don't want to, I don't want to make it sound like this, but like kind of in that mentality, like sticking it to the man, like, oh man, we're gonna just start our own studio and make our own video game because we can do this better than anyone else, kind of thing. And I don't know, it kind of just stuck and it grew, and we got to this point where we were looking at our product and we're like, holy crap, we have something legit here. Like
Yeah.
this is turning out to be a real thing. And yeah, like, we had Gareth hop on board, we had you hop on board, we, started going to the conventions and PAX and stuff, getting good feedback. And we're at the point now where it's kind of like we're waiting for publisher feedback to see if we're going to get funded to
Mhm.
continue development. And it's kind of like there's there's no other option. Like we have to make this game. Like
Yeah.
it has to get made. People want it, and we want to see it finished.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean, like you're talking about like the whole thing of it sounds kind of weird sticking it to the man, but then I think almost every game studio that is existing today is one that has basically came out of people would just want to make their own thing and do their own thing and be away from it. Because I mean, even just listen to what the guys. I mean, I know there's a whole controversy around Borderlands just now, and maybe Randy's basically running the studio, and I know that. But he started by making Half-Life 2 mods, and then they basically got money to make a bigger version. They made the add-ons for Half-Life, and then a lot of the other guys, like even just um, Oh my god, Tim Schafer. Yeah, they go. If I forgot that name, I was going to kill myself. But Tim Schafer basically walked away from Lucas because he wanted to make his own stories that were just for him, that were for no one else.
Yeah,
So these are all very common themes. I think when you start your own studio, you want to do something differently, but no one really will fund that idea because I think for Tim, especially when he left Lucas, he had just finished Grim Fandango and he was wanting to make weirder, even more controversial, stories. And Lucas were like, that's too weird. We'll never fund it. It'll never get pitched. So he was like, I've got all this money for Grim. I might as well just go start my own company. And that's how he started Double Fine. And I've religiously watched that guy for the last 5 years since I left my job, and he's had some pretty fucking grueling. I mean, I can
yeah,
remember watching the video of him talking about when they got cut from Xbox to make Psychonauts, and they were basically on their own with no money, and he still like gets emotional about like that day standing in front of everybody telling them that there was no more money left. Everybody had to
Mhm.
leave at the end of the week. So it's been fucking terrible, like running that studio. It has been really hard, but he's pulled through. I mean, he's managed to
Yeah,
find like, he was the first guy in Kickstarter to ever raise $1 million for a video game, and he's got multiple contracts now with Sony. He's remastered a lot of his old games from Lucas. So there was terrible years where like he had no money and he couldn't pay anybody, but he just kept grinding, and look where he is now. The guy is successful. So I think what you're doing is not only brave, but I think it really should be done more because there's less people taking risks, I think, and especially on the IP you're pushing just now, because like you're not building a first person shooter, you're not building the next Call of Duty, right? You're building
yeah,
something that is almost a niche, but one I know that people appreciate, because we had this conversation after you took me on, that I met a guy randomly in a card playing game, and he knew who you and Armin were. He knew who Red Essence Games were.
yeah. It's
So, and
crazy.
that was in Scotland. Yeah, that was crazy. So, do you feel like you're doing something valid? Do you still feel like you're still? I mean, it's a hard question to pose to you. I'm no
Yeah,
that
yeah.
telling
I
you're not going to give up on anything, but yeah,
Yeah, so I think the deal with the kind of game we're building an isometric 2D hand painted action RPG. And it's kind of one of those things where, it's a big line of words, but at the end of the day, like everybody understands what that is. Like
yeah,
a 2D action RPG is a 2D action RPG. So we're building a fairly safe genre of
yeah,
game. I think what's making it more niche is like us kind of going there with the darkness like vibe
yeah,
to it, and the
mm-hmm.
whole like hand painted art style. I know this really bright pixel art kind of style has been in for a little while, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's being phased out like a little bit by more 3D games and other hand painted type games. Um, but yeah, it's not like we're building some weird like walking simulator that has like a really ambiguous story. It's like fairly straightforward in terms of how it plays and like what
Yeah,
you can expect from it
yeah,
in terms of mechanically. But what obviously makes us stand out is the art style and the story, and the one of our major features is that we're building the game world to be playable forwards and backwards. So without really spoiling anything, essentially the world, you can play each map like going one way or from the back end. So you get this choice at the beginning of the game whether or not you want to go left or right, and you essentially play the story like backwards. So you'll have two different storylines, two different characters, companion characters and abilities and stuff like that.
yeah. Because there's the way you explain it to me. There's a tech route and there's a more nature route. They're the kind of
Sure.
two conflicting ideologies within which I think is an interesting also take on just the modern world, because that is something I think we're at battle with constantly, is too much technology taking over what is still organic in nature. So it probably is actually I would say a very aptly timed game, because the whole culture of like us destroying the world is a very hot topic at the moment, especially with environmentalists. So it
Sure.
would definitely. I mean, you're probably obviously not thinking about that when you're building the game, but I think people will still make those connections because, like I said, if you're mixing tech with nature, it is a thing in its own, that a conversation that people are already having. So,
Yeah.
and then of course you just came back from PAX, and I'm assuming the positivity was there with the game. I did see a lot of people playing it and really enjoying it.
Yeah, so we just included local multiplayer. We feel like that's kind of like a lost art in a certain sense for a lot of games. Like a lot of these Switch games are including a multiplayer component that are more like action focused, but they're not really the kind of games that are like very story heavy. And I've always like you said, like I have my fiance, and I've always wanted to just sit and like play through a story game with her. Right now, a lot of the options are like one of us has to watch the other play a game, and it would
Yeah.
be cool to like experience that with someone. And growing up too, I always wanted to play like Final Fantasy with one of my friends, for example, but they're
Mhm.
pretty much single player games.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so what I'm getting at is at PAX it was cool because we were able to set up two monitors with two seats each, and it was
Mhm.
awesome to watch people kind of like pass the controller back and forth if they wanted to switch players or kind of coordinate together to fight enemies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had like a pretty overwhelmingly positive feedback from attendees this year, especially compared to last year. I think we fixed a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that people were having some issues with.
Yeah, because I feel that that term local multiplayer, I mean, we call it couch co-op. So it's
Yeah,
the fact that you can sit on the couch. I mean, like for me, I feel. I mean, you talk about the Switch. I was just going to say the one company I felt that has almost championed that into the 21st century has been Nintendo, and a
hmm,
lot of their like Mario Party games or multiplayer focus games, mostly with Mario. But even stuff now like Overcooked, which is kind of taking its own kind of fad and stuff, and
yeah,
you can sit with 4 or 5 people in one chair and you can all pass, and even stuff like we've actually just talked on a new game called You Don't Know Jack, and it's where you can actually have the thing up on the screen and everyone plays with their phones. So I think that community has almost something that we all crave, because with online multiplayer, which kind of came within its own right with stuff like Xbox and Dreamcast in the 2000s,
yeah,
people were kind of like, oh, if you're in another room in another city, it doesn't matter. You can still connect to people over this headset. But then looking at leading psychologists and people who study this, human behavior and social media, they say that even the interaction with you and me talking over a headset is still nowhere near the connection would be if I was standing in front of you talking to you, because you feel like you're seen and heard then if there's a physical person in front of you. But that whole away from each other is something that almost makes it, less. The human interaction basically disappears. So again, that's solving. I mean, solving all these world problems. Nick, you must feel so accomplished with all these things that you fights on nature and
you're
bringing
talking
people
about
together. And, yeah, but then again, you're thinking about it in maybe the terms where this would be good just to make it a good gameplay aspect. But yeah, I think it solves a lot of bigger issues. Bringing people together, especially, and I think that's what I love about the Switch is. I had this moment almost like a TV commercial when I felt so cheesy, but sitting playing Mario Kart, and a guy was like, "Oh, that's the Switch? Is that any good?" I was like, "Oh, here, man! I just broke off one of the controllers and gave it to him, and we
yeah,
played Mario Kart." So, yeah, like I think it's the same kind of thing that almost is missing from games now, where you can share it with people, because, like you said, you wanted to have a experience where you could share the love you have, which is video games, with your fiance. Because Grace isn't a huge gamer, but she does love like interacting with them when she can.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, she was even. I think she even sent me a story when you were just plodding through God of War 4, which is incredible, by the way. But yeah, like I think even the thing that attracts people to games now is even just the stories that they tell. Because even watching God of War, I feel is an experience. Never mind playing it,
Oh, for
because
sure.
this story is so epic. And I mean, Santa Monica definitely knocked out of the park with that one. But yeah. So, have you also? What else is your kind of focus apart from because you've explained the gameplay stuff? Do you feel there's a good story there as well that you've been developing?
Yeah, so a lot of the theme we're kind of playing around with is sort of like internal conflict and growing as a person. To kind of just preface this for the listeners, the story of Mask of Semblance goes: this boy wakes up in this world, and only a fragment of his memory persists from before, and he finds this sentient mask, and the mask basically asks him to carry him around on his face, and go on this adventure together. And along the way they're kind of like meeting people and having to either help them out or not help them out. A lot of the decision making is up to the player, and we want to really make the player think about the actions that they're choosing, because I think a lot of games have very like binary answers. It's like, are you picking the good path or the bad path kind of thing? And what we find very interesting is just how like slight phrasing can emit a different emotion from another person you're talking to. So even with the current demo we put out, you'll see very like I can't think of exactly how we phrased it, but like I think one of the situations is the NPC is like, here's this bad situation that's happening, and the character is either like, yeah, I want to help you, or we'll see what we can do. So it's kind of like, very very slight change in tone can obviously emit a different reaction from the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
So those choices will influence the endings as well as the interactions throughout the game. And yeah, just like I was saying, it's got fairly standard RPG mechanics, but I'm into like the super weird kind of games like the Nier franchise and Drakengard and stuff like that.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I obviously love Zelda and Final Fantasy and stuff like that too. But I don't know, we're kind of just trying to go there with the weird factor in our game a little bit.
Yeah, I
I
think,
yeah.
yeah, you draw inspiration from every part of your life, and I think, people even talk about Miyamoto and his revolutionary take on stuff like Zelda and Mario, but then they are all derived from original IPs and ideas he had outside of working in Japan. I mean, even like Zelda was based on, I think it was a Tom Cruise film really early on in the 80s called Legend,
Mm. Oh yeah.
where he plays like a guy with a sword and shield, and he's got to rescue a girl. Um, but apparently, a lot of Zelda's influence, or Link's influence, sorry to say specifically, came from watching that film. So, I think you just take in as much of the natural world as you can, and then you focus that into another effort, which for you is this video game. And then it's specifically art style. I mean, is there anything you're consciously thinking about when you're painting a lot of your characters or you're building your worlds? Like a lot of the enemies, obviously, just now are based within nature. They're rocks, they're plants.
Sure.
The boy himself, it seems like an almost. You were saying it was almost an influence of cultures from Armin's side and your side from the Greek side, like you were trying to combine. Is that something conscious within your art as well?
Yeah, for sure. I've always been really interested in the look of like Middle Eastern architecture and patterns and clothing and stuff like that. So I feel like that's kind of like been a running theme in a lot of my designs. Uh, yeah, so I also grew up with a lot of like anime and stuff like that. So I feel like I kind of have that a little bit of that Japanese stylistic stuff, especially when I'm working on Mask of Semblance. But in terms of design, I draw a lot from, yeah, like Greek, Middle Eastern, kind of more ancient civilization sort of stuff. I'm into like the standard medieval sort of fantasy look, but I don't typically incorporate that into my work unless it's necessary for a client.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the West, well, the stuff you're talking about is more the Western take on medieval stuff, so more mainland Europe. So even with The Witcher, that has obviously a very, I think, different feel from even stuff like Dragon Age, because
Yeah.
Witcher is obviously based on a set of Polish books. So the
Mhm.
whole architecture and medieval theme that they have in Novigrad is very particular to the Polish heritage that they're working on when they're building those games, as opposed to now they're building cyberpunk. So yeah, the focus,
Mhm.
well, you can see in the demos it is a totally Western, almost Americanized game now.
Yeah.
Um, well, Witcher still has that feel of Slavic, as opposed to, like you said, you look at your game, you look at your characters. I mean, even for me, not knowing much about the heritage, but like the first thing I noticed with the Greek style is their shoes.
Mhm.
I don't like, which I think that's a weird thing if straight on, but even the curved tips, even the weapons, I would find that the
Yeah.
even like Sola's spear, it has that reach of like an ancient Greek weapon, like an almost
Sure.
gladiator style of saber. And is that something that you will continue throughout the whole game? Are you mixing any more cultures, or is it mostly just those regions?
I think it's mostly just those regions. Yeah. It's just kind of what draws me in. And even if you look at my older concepts, like on my art station or something like that, like you can still kind of see it. Even when I was working on more of like a um, not cyberpunk, like steampunk kind of game, I still
Yeah,
kind of had those like scarf kind of fabrics and like really rich patterns, like symmetrical patterns and stuff like that. I don't know what it is
Yeah.
about it. I just like I in terms of like video games related to, I think Final Fantasy 12, even though it's not my favorite Final Fantasy, has one of the best looking worlds and designs out of any of.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
man,
that's
it's crazy. Like I just love all that like desert kind of looking like dry, arid landscape, but like then you'll come across these like beautiful waterfalls and stuff like that. So
yeah,
um
definitely more within nature. I mean, like you can obviously turn your hand to either or, which I think is great. It obviously shows diversity, but then I think what's great about that is that it is almost like your personal style, which is something people
mhm,
probably strive for years and never really find. But I think style for me is not just the artist you love, but also the life you live. So, like, if you
sure.
have a great rich heritage like you, or even for me, say, like, because I'm Scottish, if you
Yeah,
draw within that culture, then that makes that part of your art personalized that nobody can really copy because it is particular to just you. So yeah, I mean, there's stuff I've seen. Like, I mean, I think for a while back, when I was looking at your stuff, one of my favorite things I think you ever done was the vampire banner, which I think you done way back.
oh yeah, yeah,
Which I was like, I actually thought it was a Magic the Gathering card. I was like, holy shit, that's incredible. So like that to me is like the more Western style kind of look and
sure.
feel that you can emulate. And then even stuff like your Crail painting, which I felt was crazy good as well. So yeah, you can see those weapon designs, like you said, those patterns just emanate through different stuff, which is great because yeah, it makes you a more diverse artist and means you can turn your hand to whatever the client needs. So I take it for you just now. Are you focusing more on like are you 100% like full steam into Mask? Like you're taking like maybe little to none freelance stuff on? Or are you just focusing on building the game now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of at the point where we need to just really start production, and we have started production essentially, and
Yeah,
yeah, so that if we get funding, then we can kind of tell the publisher, yeah, we're already full steam ahead, and we're ready to just continue.
yeah.
Um,
And push it out to kind of like alpha beta, kind of just getting it ready for shipping and stuff like that. So
yeah, we're building a lot of the rest of our mechanics and abilities and stuff like that, and kind of fleshing out some more concept art so that we have a really good feel of how everything's going to work. Um,
yeah.
you know that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, I definitely think you should update your art station because yeah, there's so many awesome things I've seen you making recently that I would love to see more of your concepts and stuff you're working on. I know a lot of it's kind of privy because you're trying to keep things close to your chest
Yeah,
and
it's
you're wanting things that I know, but just
there.
there's so many guys. I can assure you, there's so many amazing things Nick has showed me and awesome worlds and obviously like if you haven't already, go and play the demo, download it and play it because I think it's on where is it? You can get the demo
Oh,
now.
sorry.
It's
Yeah, it's on Game Jolt. That is the
Game
site.
Jolt, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, Game Jolt is, I think, a great service as well. And have you considered any stuff like Steam's early access or their Greenlight program or anything like that
So,
as well?
some people put their games up before they're really supposed to. I believe in the terms of service when you're doing Steam Early Access, you're supposed to have an I want to say an alpha. So like the game is supposed to be complete, just not like bug free or like necessarily like feature complete. And
Yeah,
we're just not there yet. So I wouldn't really feel comfortable like doing that and taking money or pre-orders yet.
yeah,
If
yeah.
people want to
Before you felt it was
donate, I'm
ready.
more than happy to take that money, but
Yeah.
otherwise,
Well, it funds a dream. It funds your appreciation for making something. I mean, and I feel like even stuff like Kickstarter is always great because I mean Tim. It was funny. There was one of the biggest talking points on one of his episodes when they built before they built Broken Age, like really early on,
mhm,
was that they took because he talks to the camera about it. He's like, we took all this money from all these people, and they think I have an idea like that's ready to go, but like I haven't even started writing. So when he took the money, he then started writing like
yeah,
the game basically. So I feel like Kickstarter is maybe even a better idea because then you can then say, right, well, we took this money and we project, like you said, in 18 months, 2 years, whatever, to make it. And then people can obviously, if they're patient enough, they can wait. But I think it is also a double edged sword because it's hard to take money from people and then like you have this pressure of it needs to be done by a certain date or it needs to be done by then because I
yeah.
think even,
I've
yeah,
gotten kind of burned by Kickstarter as well. Like I had worked on projects that were funded and still ended up falling through, and this
yeah,
was totally not. I wasn't the one running anything. So
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate when something like that happens. So I definitely want to make sure that if we were to turn to crowdfunding or something like that, that
Yeah.
we were 100% confident we'd be able to deliver the product for the amount of money we're looking to raise.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
and because we're a new studio, I'm trying to be as careful with everything as possible. So
Yeah.
that's why we want to work with a publisher, because we figure that a publisher already has the connections and already will know how to market and sell your game, as well as kind of guide you a little bit in terms of like milestones and just, stuff like that. Whereas
Yeah.
when you do a Kickstarter, it's kind of like you receive this lump sum of money and then they're just like, yeah, all right, just make the game, and you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm down to do that, but again, like if we can work with a publisher, I'd prefer to do that. So that's the first step we're kind of looking to take.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, kind of moving away from Mask, because we'll chat on other things. I'll definitely leave links below if you guys can check out the game and all the next work on top of that. But move it back to art.
Yeah.
Do you feel like once you've done Mask, do you feel like you would then want to pursue something like is your role moving forward? You would just always want to make your own content, or are you looking to maybe dive back into the world of concept once you finish Mask? Or
Ideally, I want to always make video games. That's what I want to do. So, and again, ideally, like I'm really killing myself right now in terms of like making the art and helping manage the company and all that kind of stuff. So, what I would really like to do is be more of like the kind of like story, like direct, like I'd be the director essentially, and I would still like to do concept art, and I'd still like to do character designs and stuff like that to help build the world. But I don't know. Most likely, I mean, not most likely. Hopefully, in the next game, maybe we move on to 3D, and that's not even
yeah,
really my specialty anyway.
yeah,
So, yeah, I don't. If we end up, making this game and it's successful, I don't ever really see myself doing anything but making video games.
yeah. Right. I think it's also a trade off because I mean I know years back when I run my own design business, I felt like the more I was trying to help the business grow, the less I was getting time to do art, even
Yeah,
design stuff. So that's definitely going to be something that's going to be an ever kind of lasting battle. Is that you want to make art, but then you'll have meetings to go to, you'll have budgets to sort, you'll have people to employ, you'll have a studio to run. Like, yeah, I think it's harder. I mean, I know even guys, who have set up studios and the original goal is to, start, or keep making art. But then, the higher up the chain you go, then the more responsibility you have, and it gets more
sure.
and more difficult to find those pockets of time to be creative. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a very big challenge, but one I think you're more than capable of undertaking. And of course, you have Grace by your side, Armin, the guys at Red Essence. So yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a track that will be difficult, but also one you'll have a lot of support with. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's
so
one of those really weird things. Like this is probably the weirdest time in my entire life because I've been drawing since I was like literally 3 years old, and I always thought that like yeah, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to draw for people and stuff like that. And now working on this, it's kind of like I was saying, it's almost like I'm having an identity crisis as an artist, and I'm just like I don't really. It's not that I like don't miss, doing paintings and stuff like that. But at the same time, I don't really miss it. It's kind of like I like doing the kind of work I'm doing now, even though it's like completely different from what I used to do stylistically and everything. I mean, I'm freaking animating like frame by frame animation. Never in a million
yeah,
years did I think I was going to be doing that, but it's kind of like what I have to do to make this game. And honestly, I like getting in the engine and coding as well. So
yeah,
just stuff like that. Like I find all facets of making a game very interesting. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I just like don't have a long enough attention span to be like I'm going to be an illustrator and just sit and paint for like 10 hours a day every single day.
yeah.
I feel like
Oh,
I kind
dude,
of already
yeah,
paid my dues in terms of doing that.
yeah.
And now it's like I don't know. I kind of get to dip my hands in a bunch of things at the same time.
I mean,
This game.
dude, I've met so many guys that have that have started in that. Like the other Nick I know, Offerman, who worked at Blizzard for years and now is basically
Yeah,
building his own game in his bedroom. You've even got guys who like Raf Gazzetti, who I'm working with soon, and he works with Sony Santa Monica, and he's an amazing sculptor. But then he also codes, he also does other things outside of that because he just has an interest to learn things all the time.
Yeah.
And then of course Max Berman, who we both know, who Max was a map painter in the film industry for 10 years,
Yeah.
and he was just like, I want to own my own company, I want to have my own people. And then he made oh my god, this is terrible, I forgot the name of Max's game that he released on Switch. But he basically made his own IP, his own game, got it published, got it finished, done, and now he's working on Kit Bash, which is his own kind of baby as well. So I don't think you have to wear the same hat forever. I think um, it's a very modern take on, I think, the world as it sits. There's so many opportunities, especially now with the internet, right? You can make games in your bedroom at a weekend. You can publish it on YouTube. You can have people watch it. You can put it on Steam. Like, it's not a thing where back in the day we were very limited by the tools we had. Now like even now, like look at things like Unreal and Unity, where those used to be engines where you have to pay money to and to get the just access to the tools, but now they're readily available for everybody to use. So I think it is very hard to have almost a set dynamic or path. I mean, people will do it, but then I think because, like you said, there's so much opportunity, it's hard, right? It's hard to just focus on one thing, even within like the realms of 2D. Like if you want to even be an illustrator, you're like, well, cool. Do you focus on environments? Do you focus on characters, props, creatures? Even within then, there's multiple disciplines.
What I've started to kind of tell myself to make myself feel better in terms of this is say I'm not as much of an artist anymore. I'm more of just a storyteller. So that can mean many things. It can be telling a story through music. It can be telling a story through making a game or painting or whatever, So that's just what I like to do at the end of the day. I like to tell stories and like make people inspired through the stories. And it just so happens that art is like the thing I'm best at in terms of relaying the story. And now I'm getting better at telling stories through game making. So
I mean, like this takes me back to a talk I watched years ago with Matt Rhodes when he basically talked about like he feels that storytelling is like human beings' superpower. Like it's the one thing that separates us from a lot of different other species, where we have these abilities to recall and reenact stories that are long gone and entertain other people with them. And he feels that like that's something that's missing from people's portfolios, even when it comes to art. Like he feels like great, you can draw anatomy, great, you can reconstruct a tree, but can you then put it in a scene that tells a story? That's what makes art compelling. It makes you want to dive further into the image. It enthralls people with a sense of wonder. Where does that light go, or what's down that path? So I feel like it's very common for artists or people in the industry to be storytellers because it is the one thing that I think sells your ideas and sells your vision to the world. Is even George Lucas, when he started with Star Wars, right? He just had a really great idea for a really good story. And everything came around that. So, once he wrote the script, the art and stuff was almost secondary to that. So, it's very, very. You're like George Lucas, Nick. That's exactly what you're like. You're number one. So, I mean, basically, I think it is a very common thing where you want to tell these stories and you want to make the world a better place with the things you're doing in this game, and I think it's going to be I'm just excited, man. I told you when I kind of first started working with you that I was just excited to see where the story went, and I think it's just going to be one of these overnight success stories that we're sitting talking about it in this podcast here, but soon you'll be on IGN soon, with the guys and getting your own review scores and stuff. So man, I'm dead chuffed for you. I think you're going to do awesome things, you and Armin and the team. So I mean that was my kind of outro as just wishing you luck, and thanks again for coming on and speaking to us about the game and about your career.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been an honor. So we'll try and get you back on at one point with Armin.
Sure.
And we can talk about like more in depth about the game. Maybe you guys hit another milestone. We'll try and get you back on. But until then, thanks for everyone for listening. Thanks for checking out the podcast as always. I will leave all next affiliate links down below, including all the stuff for Mask of Semblance. Mask of Semblance. If you have not checked it out, please go and Google it and look it up. It is an amazing piece of art that you really should experience. And I'll see you guys later on in the next episode. Thanks again. Bye.